Stop settling. The clock is ticking on living a life that doesn't inspire you. What if I told you there's a definitive blueprint to break free from the ordinary, starting today? This isn't about incremental changes. It's about unlocking a radical transformation that allows you to redefine your limits and achieve an exceptional existence. Don't miss out on the strategies that will change your life forever. There's a common misunderstanding about people who achieve at the highest level. We assume they must have something special, a unique gift, a secret advantage, some hidden code the rest of us don't. But that belief is false. High achievers don't succeed because they're chosen or lucky. They succeed because they've learned what not to do. They don't just chase success, they carefully avoid the habits, distractions, and subtle mistakes that quietly destroy progress over time. Because success, at its core, isn't only about what you do right. It's just as much about what you refuse to do wrong. It's about what you say no to, what you protect, and the boundaries you build around your time, your focus, and your energy. The truth is, greatness isn't built in the spotlight. It's shaped in the quiet moments when no one's watching, in the decisions that look small but add up, in the discipline that no one claps for. The people who rise to the top aren't flawless. They're simply more structured. They know when to say no. They know when to step back. They know what deserves their energy and what doesn't. Their strength comes not from being perfect, but from being precise. They treat their daily routines like a system that protects their progress. And that protection doesn't happen by accident. It's built through trial, reflection, and often through painful lessons. They've realized that one big failure rarely ends a dream. It's the small, unnoticed mistakes, repeated day after day, that do. The tiny compromises, the quiet distractions, the habits that seem harmless but slowly rob momentum. Those are the real killers of success. Because drift slow, comfortable, unnoticed drift is far more dangerous than destruction. One of the biggest traps successful people learn to avoid is the need to please everyone. It feels kind, it feels smart, and it feels safe. But it's poison to your progress. The moment you start trying to keep everyone happy, you lose sight of what actually matters. You stop leading and start performing. You trade authenticity for approval. High achievers understand they're not for everyone, and they accept that truth fully. They don't adjust their direction based on who praises them or who doesn't understand them. Because when you spend your time managing opinions, you stop building value. Pleasing everyone costs too much: your time, your energy, your clarity. You end up saying yes to things that don't serve you, drifting through days filled with obligations that lead nowhere. And the most exhausting part? The people you're trying hardest to impress often won't even remember the effort. Or worse, they'll expect it again. Leadership doesn't mean constant approval. It means clear priorities, hard boundaries, and the courage to disappoint when necessary. Progress was never meant to be popular. It demands conviction, the ability to keep moving even when others don't agree with you. To grow, you must get comfortable being misunderstood, not arrogant, not dismissive, just centered. Centered enough to say, I respect your opinion, but my life isn't built around it. Because when you need everyone's approval, you stop being yourself. And over time, that costs more than rejection ever could. Real achievers don't live by guilt. They know every yes is a no to something else, something possibly more important. They protect their limited energy with absolute discipline. They respect their own time, the way others respect deadlines. Yes, it will sting to say no sometimes to friends, to family, to seemingly great opportunities. But every no that protects your alignment is an act of long-term self-respect. It keeps your path clean, your vision clear, and your priorities strong. Because people-pleasing isn't about kindness. It's about fear. Fear of rejection, fear of disapproval, fear of being alone. But solitude is not a weakness. It's where clarity lives. Real growth often feels lonely at first, but that loneliness builds conviction, and conviction builds leaders. When you stop needing to please everyone, you finally start pleasing the only person that truly matters, your future self. The second mistake most people make and successful people learn to outgrow is waiting for motivation. It's one of the most addictive illusions in the world. That rush of energy when everything feels aligned, that spark that makes the work feel effortless for a moment. Motivation feels powerful, but it's not reliable. It's like whether it comes and goes with your mood, your energy, your circumstances. If your consistency depends on motivation, your performance will always be weak. High achievers understand this early. They don't depend on feeling like it. They depend on systems. They build routines that work even when motivation is missing. They act not because they're inspired, but because they've built a personal contract. This is who I am. This is what I do. Motivation is a gift. Discipline is the foundation. The real winners don't chase the feeling. They build a system that makes the feeling unnecessary. Because when your structure is solid, when the workout is pre-scheduled, when your deep work block is already on your calendar, your emotions don't decide your actions. Your standards do. Motivation is the spark. Consistency is the engine. Consistency grows through repetition, through friction, through the days when you don't feel like doing it, but do it anyway. That's when real personal power is built. Every time you act without waiting for motivation, you strengthen trust not with the world, but with yourself. And that self-trust compounds quietly. The more you honor your own word, the more unstoppable you become. High achievers don't wake up wondering whether it'll be a productive day. The decision was made before the morning ever arrived. When life throws interruptions or difficulties, they adapt fast. Not because they feel ready, but because they've trained to respond regardless. This ability isn't talent or luck. It's built through repetition, through structure, through designing your life around discipline, not emotion. So ask yourself, how many chances have you delayed, waiting to feel right? How many times have you promised yourself you'll start when you're ready? The truth is, readiness isn't a feeling, it's a decision. And that decision is always available. Right now. High achievers are not lucky, gifted, or magically motivated. They've simply built their lives on conscious choices, what to pursue, what to protect, and what to ignore. They understand that success isn't a reward for working more. It's the outcome of working right. It's built on awareness, clarity, and deliberate design. Every level of growth brings new challenges, new distractions, and new traps. But those who keep rising are the ones who stay alert, protecting their systems, defending their focus, and refining their discipline. Because real success is not just built, it's defended. So stop chasing motivation. Stop playing for applause. Build your structure. Guard your time. Respect your path. And most importantly, keep your eyes not just on the prize, but on the habits that quietly decide whether you reach it or not. Because success doesn't belong to the talented. It belongs to the disciplined. How many days have we lost because we were waiting to feel like doing the work? How many mornings have slipped away while we searched for the perfect mood, the right playlist, the inspirational video, the ideal conditions? Here's the truth. Those perfect conditions are not coming, not consistently, and you can't build something meaningful on top of a feeling that shows up only when it wants to. So you stop waiting, you start moving, you decide what matters, and you do it without asking your mood for permission. High achievers work according to the schedule, not their emotions. The schedule is non-negotiable. They know life won't pause just because you're not inspired. Results don't wait for your energy to feel perfect. They appear because you showed up anyway. In the end, it's not about how you feel. It's about who you are. When you become the kind of person who stays in motion without needing hype, fire, or applause, you unlock a level of strength that most people never touch. On the surface, it doesn't even look like a mistake. It feels like ambition. You set 10 goals. You start 5 projects. You map out 3 massive transformations. At first, it feels powerful, like you're taking control of everything. But soon, the weight of all those moving parts crushes the very momentum you were trying to build. Because there is no mastery in scattered focus. There's no real progress in divided attention. When you stretch yourself too thin, you don't grow, you fracture. Not because you're incapable, but because you didn't prioritize. High achievers understand this. They don't confuse being busy with being effective. They're not out to impress people by juggling endless tasks. They're focused, ruthlessly focused on what moves the needle. They go deep, not wide. They do fewer things, but they do them better. They know the fastest way to go nowhere is to try to go everywhere at the same time. If you give everything equal attention, nothing gets the intensity it needs. That's how you end up with a dozen half-finished projects and no clear wins. And when that happens, you stop trusting yourself. You start treating your goals like suggestions instead of commitments. Not because you're lazy, but because you keep demanding more than your system can handle. They strip away the noise. They identify one primary objective, the most important thing, the thing that will make everything else easier or irrelevant. Then they aim all their firepower at it, time, energy, focus. Not forever, but long enough to make real progress. This isn't a lack of ambition, it's maturity. It's understanding that success isn't about how much you start, it's about how much you finish. Finishing demands focus, simplicity, and the discipline to cut away the 90% of distractions so you can dominate the 10% that matters most. It means saying no to good ideas that don't align right now. It means delaying goals that don't serve today's mission. It means trading variety for depth. And when you do that, results come faster because your energy isn't scattered anymore. Your actions compound. Your time actually matters. High achievers scale, not by doing everything at once, but by sequencing, stacking, and compounding wins. You don't need 12 active goals right now. You need one mission so clear, so sharp, that you can put your full weight behind it. This one is subtler, but just as deadly. One wave of stress, and you abandon the plan. One burst of fear, and you change direction. One bad day, and you torch the whole thing. The problem isn't having emotions. It's letting them steer the ship. High achievers feel fear, doubt, anger, exhaustion, just like everyone else. But they've trained themselves to respond, not react. They build systems that protect tomorrow from the turbulence of today. Because your emotions aren't always telling you the truth. Anxiety often says run when you need to lean in. Doubt says slow down when you need to press forward. Frustration says quit when you're 1 inch away from a breakthrough. If you don't learn to pause, breathe, and override the impulse, you'll wreck what you've built, not because you can't succeed, but because you let your current mood decide your future. They anchor their actions in values, not feelings. They make decisions based on standards, not temporary states. They understand that what feels urgent isn't always important, and what feels uncomfortable isn't always unsafe. This is why they don't cancel commitments, because they're tired. They don't rip up the strategy because they're having a bad day. They don't disappear when motivation fades. This isn't robotic, it's elite self-management. They pre-decide their responses. If I wake up tired, I still do the non-negotiables. If I'm frustrated, I wait 30 minutes before responding. Feelings are signals, not orders. You acknowledge them, but you don't let them take the wheel. Here's one of the most dangerous illusions. Because I'm busy, I must be advancing. But activity is not achievement. Noise is not traction. A full calendar does not mean a full life. You can spend the whole week in calls, meetings, and multitasking, yet have nothing to show for it. High achievers measure differently. They measure in outcomes, in results, in forward movement that's real and visible. They know the gulf between productive and performative, between intention and actual progress. And they're obsessed with being effective, not just looking active. They limit meetings. They kill unnecessary multitasking. They protect deep work time. They cut open tabs, both digitally and mentally. They ask, what did I actually build this week? What moved forward in a meaningful way? And what am I doing just to feel busy, to avoid the hard thing that really matters? Because staying busy is the easiest way to avoid the discomfort of truly critical work. High achievers don't hide in activity. They move straight toward the high leverage, uncomfortable actions most people dodge. They do the call, the pitch, the decision, not just the easy organizing and rearranging. That's why they win, not because they work endless hours, but because their hours are aimed like a laser. If there's one thread through all of these mistakes, it's focus. The discipline to ignore what doesn't matter. The courage to say no. The clarity to act without waiting for the perfect feeling. High achievers guard their attention like treasure. They protect their systems like their life depends on it, because in many ways, it does. This is the foundation we must build before we chase bigger goals, because it's not energy, mood, or luck that separates the top from the rest. It's structure, precision, and the relentless discipline to do what matters, even when it's the last thing you feel like doing. It's easy to believe that true strength is found in non-stop motion. The long nights, the working weekends, the never-ending grind. We wear exhaustion like a badge, as if being tired proves we care. But that's not strength. That's poor strategy. Burnout doesn't care how ambitious you are. It doesn't care how big your vision is. If you don't rest, your system will eventually collapse. Not all at once, but slowly, silently. First, clarity fades. Then creativity disappears. Discipline weakens. Belief fades next. And soon you're moving, but nothing meaningful is left in the tank. High achievers have learned this lesson. They don't glorify fatigue, they prioritize recovery. Rest isn't separate from the mission. It's built into it. Recovery is not an interruption to progress. It's the foundation that allows it to continue. They understand that rest isn't avoidance. It's wisdom. That stepping back at the right moment keeps them moving forward longer. And recovery isn't just physical. It's mental, emotional, even spiritual. Because you can't make sharp decisions with a fogged mind. You can't produce focused work with an exhausted nervous system. You can't lead clearly when you're running on fumes. That's why high performers protect recovery like it's sacred. They sleep intentionally. They guard their energy like it's their top investment, because it is. They protect their peace, knowing it's the root of all performance. They don't apologize for rest. They see it for what it is, sharpening. A blade can only stay sharp if it's pulled back to be honed. Rest is how you sharpen yourself. So stop thinking that more hours mean more progress. Stop measuring your value by how tired you are. There's nothing admirable about running yourself into the ground. What's admirable is creating a rhythm you can sustain, one with seasons of deep effort and seasons of deep renewal, where your best work is supported by your best rest. That rhythm might mean unplugging at night, taking a real day off, stepping away to think instead of always doing, saying no to things that drain life from your focus, protecting your weekends or scheduling silence before chaos begins. When you do, you stop chasing recovery and panic and start operating from abundance. You stop reacting to exhaustion and start performing from energy. True discipline isn't never resting. It's resting strategically before your body or your mind forces you to. High achievers rest more than others. Not because they're softer, but because they're smarter. They rest before decline begins. They maintain their edge like a craftsman maintaining their tool, with care, intention, and consistency. Start thinking that way. Don't wait for collapse. Build your pauses into your plan. Because success isn't about how long you can run. It's about how far you can go. Comparison may seem harmless, even helpful, like inspiration or benchmarking. But left unguarded, it becomes poison. At first, it looks like motivation. They're doing great. I should step up. But soon, it turns into self-doubt. Then frustration. Then distraction. You start scanning what everyone else is doing. Who's ahead? Who's trending? Who's growing faster? And without realizing it, your focus shifts from building to watching. You stop creating and start measuring. You stop acting and start reacting. You trade your lane for theirs. High achievers have learned to block that noise. They stay aware of the world, but they're not consumed by it. They use observation as information, not identity. They know their only real competitor is in the mirror. The scoreboard that matters is their own progress. Are you sharper than yesterday? More consistent than last month? More aligned with what you said mattered? That's the metric. That's the race. Comparison kills authenticity. It convinces you to pivot when you should persist. It tempts you to copy paths never meant for you. And soon you're building a life that looks good on the outside, but feels hollow inside. High achievers don't build for approval, they build for impact. They define success on their terms. They move at their own pace. They trust their path even when the crowd doesn't understand it. Because they know when you stay in your lane long enough, you create separation. You build depth. You master your craft while others chase trends. And yes, comparison still tries to sneak in, they feel it too. But they catch it early. They notice the noise, but don't give it volume. They feel envy, but don't feed it. They remember the only race worth running is the one that takes you where you wanted to go in the first place. That clarity, that tunnel vision for purpose is what makes their focus unshakable. This mistake is one of the most seductive lies in personal growth. I'll start when I'm ready, when things calm down, when the timing is right. But that moment never arrives. Perfect conditions are a mirage. They fade the closer you approach. If you keep waiting for certainty, for the fear to vanish, you'll wait your whole life. Because clarity doesn't appear before action. It's created by action. Confidence doesn't show up first. It grows from execution. Certainty is not the entry fee of progress. It's the reward you earn by stepping forward in doubt. High achievers don't wait. They move, even when it's messy, even when it's uncertain, especially when it's uncomfortable, because they know momentum isn't found, it's made. Not from planning, but from movement. The person who starts today, even small, will always outpace the one still waiting for the perfect plan. Preparation has its place, but if you're honest, sometimes preparing is just a safer name for procrastination. High achievers spot that pattern early. They act before they feel ready. They trust their instinct to build clarity on the move. You don't need a perfect setup. You need to send the message. Launch the project. Make the first call. Take the step now. Each small action earns you self-trust, because that's what this really is about. Building proof that you can move without permission, that you can create without certainty. And when you act despite the fear, fear changes shape. It stops being a red light and becomes a green one, a signal you're entering growth. Discomfort means development. Uncertainty means evolution. Fear means you're still alive in the climb. High achievers don't numb it out. They use it as a compass. They know the best moment never appears on its own. The best moment is the one you create by deciding, this is it. I begin now. Comfort. It's tempting. You work hard. You reach a milestone. And for the first time, things feel calm. You earned a break. You slow down a little. Then, a little more. And slowly, your edge dulls. That's how it starts quietly. You stop sharpening. You stop stretching. You stop chasing growth because for the first time, you can stop. But that's the trap. When comfort turns into the destination, growth dies quietly behind it. High achievers understand comfort's role. It's a place to rest, not a place to stay. They appreciate peace but don't worship it. They appreciate stability but never settle into it. When they feel themselves softening, they reignite. They create new challenges, raise standards, and build pressure from within. Not chaotically, but intentionally. Because they know staying the same isn't neutral, it's decline. You don't freeze progress. You lose it, inch by inch. You stop pushing not because you can't, but because you've made comfort the goal. And once comfort becomes normal, ambition feels unnecessary. So they disrupt that pattern on purpose. They stay uncomfortable, not through punishment, but through evolution. They stretch because they respect who they could become. They push because they honor their potential, not because they're dissatisfied. Growth isn't about rejecting comfort, it's about refusing to let it define you. So when your life feels smooth, check your edge. Ask yourself, am I truly fulfilled or just comfortable? Because every time you choose ease over excellence, you trade expansion for erosion. High achievers don't make that trade. They rest to recover, not to retire. They work with rhythm, not complacency. They keep sharpening for as long as they're alive to do so. You do it with precision. You choose one area. You raise the bar, and you make it non-negotiable. Maybe it's physical. Maybe it's financial. Maybe it's spiritual. Maybe it's relational. But you pick it and decide the current level is no longer acceptable. And then you start training yourself to seek discomfort. Not to prove anything to the world, but to prove something to yourself. That you're still sharp, still hungry, still capable of growing even when growth isn't required for survival. Because high achievers don't sit around waiting for life to force change. They choose to change. They've built a habit of preemptive growth. They don't need pain to push them forward. They move proactively by intention, not emergency. You can't drift into greatness. You can't glide into your next level. If you only maintain, you slowly decline. Maintenance without expansion is the start of mediocrity. And mediocrity is the start of regret. So raise it. Raise the pace. Raise the intensity. Raise the standard. Don't aim for comfort. Aim for capacity. Not ease, but expansion. Not relief, but resilience. As the work stacks up, it's easy to forget. You get lost in the lists, in the deadlines, in the managing of details. And without noticing, you lose the why. You forget what this was all for. You forget who you were building for in the first place. That's when burnout sneaks in, not just physical fatigue, but emotional disconnection. You keep crossing finish lines, but they don't feel like victories anymore. You're winning, but it feels empty. Because progress without purpose eventually collapses into exhaustion. High achievers guard against this. They reconnect, they recalibrate. They remind themselves, this isn't just about results. It's about impact, about legacy, about becoming the kind of person they will respect when the work is over. No prize is worth earning if you can't respect the person who won it. No result is worth it if it erodes your integrity. Success that makes you forget the person you wanted to become isn't success at all. That's why you have to anchor yourself to your values, to your vision, to the relationships, and the future that actually matter. Not the shiny distractions that look impressive online. Not the things that keep other people comfortable. Not the version of success someone else decided for you. Because if you lose that anchor, you'll start building what doesn't belong to you. And you'll lose the fire that started you in the first place. High achievers don't just stack wins. They stack alignment. They don't pursue achievement for its own sake. They pursue it for a reason that's worth the pursuit. And when they realize they're chasing the wrong thing, they adjust. It's not about throwing everything away. It's about refining, tightening the compass, correcting the aim. Ask yourself, am I still building something I believe in? Does this still feel right? Am I proud of the way I'm living, or just the outcomes I'm producing? If the answer is no, it's time to realign. You remind yourself of the mission. You clarify. Who is this for? What values are showing up in the way I'm building? What legacy will this leave? Because high achievement isn't only about winning. It's about winning in the right direction without losing what matters most along the way. Success is not magic. It's not random. It's the product of clarity, discipline, precision, and ruthless awareness. And most of the time, it's not about adding more. It's about removing what doesn't belong. The mistakes you avoid, the distractions you ignore, the habits you refuse to tolerate. You've now seen them 10 subtle mistakes that quietly kill success. Not the loud, dramatic failures, but the silent ones. The ones that slide in when you're tired, distracted, or just a little too comfortable. They sound harmless. They even feel reasonable. But left unchecked, they drain everything you've worked for. You won't avoid every mistake all the time. You're human. You'll slip. You'll catch yourself mid-pattern. You'll realize you've drifted. That's not failure, that's feedback. What matters is whether you correct the drift or let it become the new normal. Whether you adjust or justify. High achievers don't aim for perfection. They aim for vigilance. They stay close to the truth. They notice drift early. They reset quickly. They hold their standard, especially after a slip. This is the real work. Not grinding endlessly, not chasing more for the sake of more, but cutting what doesn't belong so what matters can grow. The question now is simple. What will you eliminate? What habit is quietly killing your momentum? What mindset is keeping you small? What reasonable excuse is slowly costing you your potential? Because the moment you cut it, focus sharpens, energy returns, progress compounds, and buried underneath all that clutter is the real you. The version that has shown up before, in flashes of discipline, in moments of absolute clarity, in rare days when everything felt alive and aligned. That version is still there. And every small act of elimination pulls it closer. Every course correction makes it stronger. Every broken pattern becomes the fuel for the next level. You don't need more hype. You need more honesty. You don't need more additions. You need more subtractions. What you want isn't waiting at the end of adding more. It's waiting just beyond what you're willing to remove.